Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features the Uncanny X-Men number 361, cover dated November 1998. The cover is by Adam Kubert, pencils and inks by him. There's a cover caption and it declares rather what you think, because you demanded it, the return of Gambit. Gambit, of course, a very popular character, despite the fact that after the Age of Apocalypse he was pretty much a drippy emo type, feeling guilt for his role in the Morlock massacre. But he's back now, and the big question for me, and perhaps for you too, is will he have any of that roguish charm which was so distinctive of his character back when he first appeared in Uncanny X-Men 366 and 367 and annual number 14? Will he have any of that devil-may-care thievish roguery about him? Interesting too in this cover that we have depictions of all of the team members of the current lineup for Uncanny X-Men, and every single one of them looks pretty grumpy with those glowing eyes, except for one character, and that's Kitty Pryde there, who's the only one who's looking at us, the reader, and who has a smile on her face. And it kind of conveys her character, that she is maybe the most cheerful of the X-Men represented on that particular cover. So let's open this one up to the first page. We get a really nice splash page there. Also interesting to note is that the inside cover information pages has just become one at this point. And always the inside cover information can sometimes spoil the upcoming appearances of characters in the issue, such as we can see here Black Tom Cassidy and Juggernaut. But anyway, let's get into the story. So, title of the story is Thieves in the Temple, and the creative team down here is Stephen T. Seagle, the writer, and Steve Skroce on pencils. So Steve Skroce was an artist who got his start in comics at Marvel Comics back in 1993 on the Barkerverse title Ecto Kid. So that's the Clive Barker created comic title, and this all occurred at the point, just at the point that the comics collecting bubble burst. And then he moved on to other titles such as Cable, X-Man, and indeed a little run on Spider-Man as well. Then he headed over to Image, and he did a few issues for Rob Liefeld on Youngblood Volume 3, written by Alan Moore. I have those issues. Those are excellent. I really enjoyed those issues at the time, back in 1998. But that series came to a sudden stop and was not finished, and Skroce came back to Marvel. And this is one of the first issues he does for Marvel at the end of 1998. And it is kind of a hello and do you remember me for Marvel Comics readers, and also a setup for a new ongoing title, which will be revealed at the end of this issue. But this is a really cool splash page. You can see that Skroce by this point in his career is super confident with his figure drawing, with his backgrounds, and with fight choreography too. It's really, really impressive stuff. In terms of artistic influence, my thinking is that Skroce is certainly influenced by Jeff Darrow, and he did indeed work with Jeff Darrow around 2004 on a Frankenstein title that was written by the Wachowski brothers, which also is a reminder to me that subsequent to his late 90s work back at Marvel, he teamed up with the Wachowski brothers and started doing storyboards for them on the Matrix movies and other of their movies since. But in more recent years, he's come back to comics. According to him in interviews, comics is his first love. And while storyboarding pays well, this is what I'm saying, storyboarding pays very well to skilled artists like Skroce and others. If you're really passionate about comics, then they will draw you back, and they have done him. But let's get into let's just finish out the story credits, because there's a little bit of humor here. The rest of the creative team, after writer and artist, are Steve Townsend, with Hannah Hunter and Candelario inks, Steve Blanchard colors, Steve Comicraft letters, Steve Powers editor, Bob Harris Steve in chief. So there's a little bit of a joke there because of the two Steves working together, writer and artist. So who is it really? It's Tim Townsend with Scott Hanna, Rob Hunter and Harry Candelario. On the inks, there's 23 pages of story and art in this issue. Shannon Blanchard on colours and Richard Starkings and Comicraft on the digital lettering. And in the narrative captions, we're told about Storm, about the masked men, about the location. It's Korea, it's Seoul, and Storm is there exclaiming that she's being tricked. So this story opens in medias res. Who are these ninja or Korean samurai, if that's the correct term, Korean warriors? Let's get right into the story and see what's going on. So again, another great shot there. We've got Storm breaking the panel border, and we've got these, I'm going to call them ninjas, coming down on ropes towards her, and they're also down on the street too, and they're threatening that they're going to kill her. So states the one true god, Sitarak. So longtime readers of the X-Men comics know that name, Sitarak, the gem of Sitarak. Let's continue with the story. So Storm here says, this is a brilliant panel by Skroce. Look at the full bleed art as well. Really great stuff. Look at the time he spent on the destruction of this VW Beetle here. Like, the man really enjoys art. He really knows what he's doing. Very, very impressive. Like I said earlier, it was really his work on Youngblood in 1998 that got him my attention anyway. Yeah, he's just at the top of his game by this point. And of course, readers who are familiar with his work subsequently will know that he continues to improve as an artist. But back into the story. The god you speak of is not mine, declares Storm, but if it is yours, best pray she is merciful. So this little chap here, a little bit of comedy. He's there with his boxes. He says, what's going on here in Korean? She says, away from this place, it's not safe. This guy here is winding up to throw a spear at her, but he's pulled through the wall. So who could that be? It's Kitty Pryde, of course. She says to him as she pulls off his helmet, you can call me Shadowcat. And he says to her rather dopily, you move past stone walls? And she replies, walls, doors, trees, you name it, I'll phase through it. Want to give it a try? So again, this kind of chimes with how she's depicted on the cover. You know, she is a cheerful X-Man member. She doesn't particularly have any major traumas in her backstory, just the divorce of her parents. But it's a kind of like an amicable divorce. Not that even that is a good thing, but you know what I mean. She doesn't have some kind of really horrifying origin type story. And then back into this story. This is a brutal panel here where she smashes the guy's head off the brick wall. That has got to hurt, and it looks like so in Skroce's art. Ouch, she exclaims. I guess it only works for me. Sorry. So Storm touches down on the ground. I appreciate your assistance, Kitty, but I told you to remain sequestered in case of surprise. And Kitty responds, sorry, Storm. I thought a man about to impale you in the back qualified. So, do you think we were set up? Remember, Storm declared that she was tricked. At first, she says, I did. But these men seem to have their own agenda, and one not in keeping with my contact here. But the big question remains. And then up on this rooftop is a figure dressed in black. Where, oh where is Black Tom Cassidy? He finishes off for Storm. Up, lasses, cast your eyes up. So Black Tom Cassidy, a villain for the X-Men that goes all the way back to Chris Claremont and Dave Cockrum's original run on the all-new, all-different X-Men, issue 103 in particular. Here he is smiling. He's got a little villain's moustache there, twirled moustache, really well drawn by Skroce. Nice spotting of blacks too. He says, for that's where I am, just as I said I'd be, true to my word. Though the same can't be said for you now, can it? I thought I told you to come alone, Aurora Monroe. So he's got his energy charged stick there, shillelagh, and what does Storm say in response? She says, I'm neither in the habit of being told what to do nor following orders from one of the X-Men's oldest enemies. So he says to her with some frustration, listen to you. You came of your own accord, Weather Witch. So Kitty asks Storm, you willingly agreed to meet him? Black Tom Cassidy's got a rap sheet with the X-Men a mile long. He tried to kill you the first time you met. This is a great panel here where she whips up the winds to pull him off the roof. Well aware of Black Tom's prior sins, Kitty, she says. But he offered a bounty that as leader of the X-Men I could not ignore. In exchange, he requires the skills of a thief to obtain a dangerous gem before another set on the same prize acquires it. So what is the bounty in question? Kitty gets in the middle of the conversation and says, then why set us up? Why get your little robed goons to attack us? She asks Black Tom. And he says to her, you're daft if you think they're mine. That's the bunch I'm hiring ye against. Look at all the work in this bottom panel here as they fly up into the air over Seoul. And Black Tom, or rather Ororo, says, there is much we would know, Black Tom, but let us adjourn before any other unwanted surprises find us here. So whose hand is this? Flicking a cigarette out onto the street. There's the burning Volkswagen Beetle. There are the ninjas on the ground. Yeah, really great coherent storytelling by Steve Skroce. And then we have Rogue, and she's got tears in her eyes, as is often the case with Rogue in recent years. The sun still rises, the wind still blows, her heart still pounds, but not as brightly, with a chill and skipping a beat, as long as she is without him, as long as the mutant Rogue is without. And Wolverine is there standing in her room, arms crossed. Gambit, he asks. Interesting choice here, the circular panel with the border. Huh, Wolverine, she responds. What are you talking about? And he says to her, look at the way that Skroce draws him. So he's got the huge shoulders there, and an interesting design for his face too. He looks kind of a little bit more bestial, a little bit more kind of street rough looking, if I can put it that way. Also like the detail there. I mean, we've got a close-up on Rogue's shapely derriere, but what I like is the perspective detail on her reflection in the mirror there. That's clever stuff and difficult to do and to do well by Steve Skroce. I feel like he's showing off, and I think he's well entitled to because of his skill level. So back into the story though, Logan says to her, you don't smell like nothing on this continent. You went out looking for him again, didn't you? In Antarctica. Thought your days of sneaking out and secret missions were over. Besides, even if you do find him, you can't make a man who wants to be gone come back. So she kind of denies her interest, and Wolverine says, no trace of him, nothing. I've been there 4 or 5 times, but the fortress where Remy was put on trial's gone without a trace. So that's a reference back to issue 350, the first issue scripted, over a Scott Lobdell plot by Stephen T. Seagle. She continues and says, I never should have left him there. I should have been stronger, should have fought against his mind telling me he wasn't worth saving, shoulda. And Wolverine fills in, little without sympathy, shoulda, woulda, coulda. All that matters in life is what is. Everything else is a fairy tale. Now that's the characterization of Wolverine that was established by Chris Claremont, mature Wolverine, and kudos to Stephen T. Seagle to write exactly that version of Wolverine. I like it. And Rogue says, I want a happy ending, and Wolverine says, pragmatically, only happens in stories. Oh, and I wouldn't open that door. Why? Because Colossus there is running after Marrow, who's stolen his sketchbook, because of course Colossus is an artist, and she says to him when he asks her to give back his sketchbook, why should I? Why should your stuff be any more private than my stuff, Colossus? So who intervenes except for Nightcrawler? He grabs the sketchbook, and she pulls one of her bone daggers on him. Mein Gott, he exclaims, if it's a swipers club, you're the president, you stinky blue sneak, she says to Nightcrawler. So this is all about the fact that there are new X-Men in the house, new old X-Men in the house, and maybe some people are going to have to move their rooms. So Rogue gets in the middle of it. She grabs that bone claw so as to prevent it from striking Nightcrawler. And Nightcrawler says he was only joking. Yeah, well, haha, says Marrow. That's about as funny as kicking someone out of their room. And Nightcrawler says, but Marrow, you were living in the danger room. We need to convert that space back into what it was before. A room fraught with danger that we can all use to train as a team, to hone and perfect our skills. So, plus the change, plus Salamem shows when it always comes to the X-Men. And what does Marrow say? Bull. It doesn't have anything in it, even as Rogue snaps the bone dagger. Yeah, Steve Skroce is an amazing storyteller. Just great continuity of action and kind of acting by the characters. They all have their own different way of moving. See the way that Nightcrawler stands there as well versus Rogue there with her leg kicked out and her hands on her hip, and Colossus too. Like really, really good stuff. That's subtle stuff from Skroce. So let's continue with the story. Peter says, well, I too would prefer my old room. In my absence, it has become Wolverine's. We all must make adjustments. Marrow grabs the sketchbook again. She says, I didn't take the book because I'm mad. I took it because I like this. It's pretty, she says. But forget it, you marshmallows do need a danger room because you wouldn't last a day in the Morlock tunnels. So here we have a borderless panel here. Again, I've always point this out when artists do this. It kind of varies the layout on the page. It's a nice little trick to keep things interesting. And also we have it for the final panel here where we have an exterior shot of the X-Mansion. And look how simply it's laid out there with the lights on and the light from the sky falling on the driveway there between the treetops. I think it's really, really well done. So Wolverine says that don't worry about his room. Peter can have it back because he's thinking about moving outside on the grounds. Getting back to nature's done a world of good for Storm of late. I think it'll work for me too. So that cues someone to ask, where's Storm and Kitty? Now that's a secret, says Wolverine. So Wolverine knows where Storm has gone, and he must know what that bounty is, and that Kitty went too, but he's playing it close to his chest in terms of revealing that to any of the other X-Men members. And then we're back to downtown Seoul. Like this perspective that Skroce is using here, everybody standing on the horizon line. So you see the figures in the distance, much smaller, on the main street there, doing their shopping. And Black Tom says, I'd wish you'd reconsider this, Storm. And she replies, you have called me from my team at a very delicate time, Cassidy. I want proof that your story is real. I want proof that the Juggernaut is dying. Look at this. This is another difficult shot where they're coming up the stairs here, like the detail of the hanging light bulb here in the foreground. And of course, it's casting the light this way. So we've got this side we've got the left side, his left side of his face there in shadow. That's nicely done by Skroce. So something's up with the Juggernaut. And his powers have been lost, or at least they're on the fritz. How can someone have stolen the Juggernaut's power gem? Asks Kitty. She says, I read S.H.I.E.L.D. reports that said he had merged with it. And Black Tom replies, true enough, lass, but power is a strong siren and a call to Cain Marco from the country where he first heard its song. He was lured back to Korea by word of a second gem having been unearthed. Overcome with the thought of doubling his power, he set out to retrieve the second stone. Though I've been recuperating from my own injuries, he wanted me along in case of trickery. So these old partners in crime, they both go to Korea, and here's the temple in question, and it turns out it was all a trick in order to steal the power of the gem of Sidorak into this other gemstone. Not until the crimson energies of the Juggernaut were painfully leached from Cain's body and channeled into it. It had no power, but it was transferred from one to the other. You'll see the results for yourself, says Black Tom. Interesting here, the edge of the door with the lock mechanism too is the border panel here. Again, clever stuff from Skroce. Ready for anything, he says. He's liable to be, let's turn the page, but he's gone. So he's burst his way out of the room. You can see the dirty mattress there that he was sleeping on. It's, yeah, interesting. TV there. Again, another one of these hanging light bulbs. Good stuff. Black Tom denies any knowledge of Juggernaut's disappearance, he says. He says he's just had little bursts of power since he lost the gem, but few and far between. Him being gone, that's as big a surprise to me as anyone. So Storm says, as Shadowcat has pointed out, your treachery has known no bounds in the past. I'm beginning to see its shapes forming again. But he denies it. He says, well, if you won't find him for me, do it for your mentor, Charles Xavier. Kane is his brother after all. Stepbrother, that is. And if it was him, it was him I was trying to reach when I came across you. Storm replies, do not seek to use Professor Xavier as your leverage. We will take you at your word, Cassidy, but we will follow the new trail of destruction to the Juggernaut and investigate your claims once and for all. You, however, will remain here until our return. I warn you now that what we find had best be what you described, with no further surprises. So off they go, and Skroce keeps the same shot. He has the figures moving in the shot, including this silhouette, the figure casting it, come into the light and pull a cigarette from a pack. And who does this look like? You know? Well, with the cover we have to guess that it's Gambit, yes? And what's he doing in Seoul, Korea, rather than freezing his butt off in Antarctica where Rogue left him? So here we go, another great panel here where Storm and Kitty are in conversation. It's about trust, and then their conversation is interrupted by this truck that emerges from the side of a high-rise building. Goddess, exclaims Storm. And there we see inside the hole made by the truck, it is the Juggernaut. And you can see that his limbs have shrunk, but he still has power. Look at this that Steve Skroce is pulling here. He shows us the reflection of Storm and Kitty alighting to the ground in the curved surface of Juggernaut's helmet. That's skillfully done again as well. And Juggernaut says he's still got enough power to take this city and everyone in it down with me when I fall. Okay, so the Juggernaut, even lacking all his power, is still a major threat. And so we're going to get an action sequence now as he throws another wrecked car in the air, and Storm catches it with a wind, and she thinks to herself, though we cannot spend what precious little time we have here merely keeping Juggernaut in check, that would leave the door open for another to capture our prize unchallenged, which perhaps is the real plan here. So Kitty thinks Juggernaut is crazed, and here he is trying to pull this building down. And Kitty says, how is even a little Juggernaut looking like too much for two X-Men? And Juggernaut quips, because a little goes a long way. Storm starts to build up her power in order to take the Juggernaut on. And who is this? Racing on her motorbike with apparently coattails blowing in the wind. And here he is jumping from one rooftop to another, and he's going to ride all the way down the side of that tilted high-rise corner that Juggernaut is carrying here. This is great storytelling by Steve Skroce. Imagine being tasked with drawing something like this, and see the way that Skroce is handling it, doing it so well, making it look easy. And who is it that's on the motorbike? Juggernaut gets wind of the fact that someone is on top of the building, the corner of the building that he's lugging. Let's get past the advertisement here. Of course, it's Gambit. So Gambit is back. And here is the surprising return of another mutant, declares the third-person narrator, whose story is much the same as what was said of Juggernaut on the other page, though far more personal. And he answers Juggernaut's question about who. Who? To my friends, the name's Remy LeBeau. To my enemies, it's Gambit. You can go on right ahead and forget that first name right about now. So the implication being they're enemies. Look at all the work here on the motorbike and the upside down shot as well. This is great stuff by Skroce. So Gambit lands on the ground as Juggernaut falls on his back, and the two women regard Gambit as he lights up his cigarette there, and Storm says, it looks as if you've regained your power, maybe, or his touch. He's regained his touch. Or should I call you Gambit now? You tell me, Cher. That's yours to make. No? So Remy or Gambit, friend or enemy. And here he is. He looks fairly cocky, like he always used to look before he became an emo drip. And he says, I just saw an old friend in a big mess of trouble. Thought I'd lend a hand. More than that, I wasn't thinking. Juggernaut here is enraged. He's coming for them. This is a really interesting shot here where we're seeing it from his perspective with his outstretched and moving hands. Look at the speed lines on them. And Gambit simply flicks the cigarette at Juggernaut, and that's enough to knock him on his back again. He's that weakened. And there he is sitting nonchalantly on his bike. Again, I like the way that Skroce is doing the movement of the characters. You can see Storm flying up into the air, and then she's about to touch down. Or maybe it's her that's actually knocked Juggernaut fully onto the ground. And she says, the Juggernaut is sick to Gambit. We're here to save him. I must have missed something while I was gone, replies Gambit. And she sticks a finger in his face and says, your briefing can wait, along with your explanation of why you did not notify those who care about you that you were alive and well. And he replies, didn't know anyone did care, Stormy. But this is really interesting from the perspective of a long-time reader who remembers it was Storm's decision after the Fall of the Mutants and Uncanny X-Men 227 to go forward with the world's belief that the X-Men had died in Dallas, and to strike covertly from their new base in the Australian outback and not tell fellow X-Men like Kitty Pryde, who's there, that they were still alive. So it's ironic that she's saying that to Gambit here in this situation. An irony that long-time readers would understand and get. In any case, that conversation is over, and Storm turns her attention to Juggernaut. You're sick, Kane Marco, she says. If you're to live, you must set aside your anger and accept assistance from those willing to aid you. So let's continue with the story, get past the advertisements, and a little bit of comedy there with the Korean police trying to get Kitty to pay for the damage. That's not going to happen. And then we have Gambit saying that in terms of Storm's question, she asks him, why are you here, Remy, after all this time? And his response is interesting. Just back to business as usual. Got a big offer to steal a big jewel. I'm a thief when all else fails. And all else failed. So Kitty says, Storm, we have police problems brewing, we need to scat. And Storm agrees. Remy, as I too am here to pluck a valuable prize that lies on the same path you travel, I propose a partnership. And Gambit takes Kitty's hand. They've never met before, but he says to Storm, whoever's fingers touched the gem first gets it, fine by me. And Kitty says to him, I've heard a lot about you, Gambit. Kitty Pryde, he responds, pleasure's all mine, Cher. Thanks, but business before. And then she spots a map, like a treasure map, in Juggernaut's pants. And the map is to a temple on an island off the coast. Anyone up for a little Indiana Jones globe-hopping action? Asks Kitty. So let's continue. This is kind of an entertaining story. But the scene switches back to the Xavier Institute, and it's Peter Rasputin, and he goes into Marrow's room, and she's taken aback because she's caught with all these pictures of handsome young men and women on her wall. And she's ripping them down. Colossus, no, get out of here, she exclaims. I don't want you to see this. I don't want anyone to see this. And this is an interesting aspect of the characterization of Marrow. She believes herself to be an ugly monster. but she's attracted to beautiful people. From her in her opinion, one of the most beautiful men on the planet is Warren Worthington III, who rescued her when she was in danger as a child. And so it's intriguing. And it's also intriguing that it's Peter who's going in there. And he says to her, I was just coming to apologize for earlier. I promise I will never tell anyone what I saw, Sarah, but you need not be ashamed. I too understand the need to appreciate beauty. And he slips a sketch under her door. I overreacted about my sketches, her stealing them, and so made this one for you. The cliche is that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So it's a drawing of Marrow there. And you know, the intriguing aspect of this, the kind of the dramatic irony in this case is, of course, long-time readers of Uncanny X-Men who had read Uncanny X-Men 259 when Peter emerged from the Siege Perilous. He was amnesiac in Manhattan and living the life of an artist. And he runs into a beautiful model, and it turns out that that beautiful model is actually Callisto, former leader of the Morlocks, and that it was a game that Mask was playing with her to give her a beautiful appearance. And she and Peter were left to live out a happy ever after by Claremont until it was all interrupted by Jim Lee and Bob Harris, who decided to bring Colossus back into the X-Men and have the Shadow King possess him in order to have that happen in Uncanny X-Men 200, and I'm trying to remember, it was the end of Extinction Agenda 272, and then of course Uncanny X-Men 279, where Claremont quit midway through. So yeah, irony's playing out here, because of course Marrow also idolizes not just Warren Worthington III, but also Callisto. But Callisto, she's never known her in that guise as a beautiful woman, or did she? And then the scene switches back to that island with the temple on it, and this really does look like a scene out of Indiana Jones, an Indiana Jones movie. And here the trio touch down on a rocky outcrop overlooking the temple, and they enter, and there's Kitty checking out the treasure map. And of course the temple is full of ninjas, and that's really difficult to do. Look at the level of detail there if you're looking at this page and panel in high definition. So the ninjas have found them. From everywhere and nowhere they descend, but these are not creatures of a forgotten Korean folktale. They are men honor bound to the protection of an ancient arcane power, secret warriors set against any force intent on violating the sanctity of their temple by be they men or X-Men. So one of them declares defilers, and then we get back and forth in the dialogue, but really the star of the show is the art. Look at the level of detail. It's absolutely stunning level of detail there. Gambit here, or rather maybe we'll look at what Kitty says here. She says, if the gem was theirs to start with, then Juggernaut took it and used it for evil. Then aren't we at least partly in the wrong if we give it back to them? Gambit says, I never said nothing about giving the gem back to Jugs, Katie. Meantime, we're in this now. Stop and we all fall. So of course Kitty Pryde has ninja training, samurai training from her time in Japan with Wolverine. Storm is the leader in these combat situations. She exclaims, Shadowcat Gambit behind me. So Gambit, or rather Kitty Pryde says, strategy? You know, the one they call retreat? Sure, she says. So dozens of ninjas facing them there. Let's continue here. It's a pacey story despite all of the talking. So they back into the doorway, and behind them is a pool, and there are all these vines hanging from the ceiling as well. And where are they going to retreat? Looks like a whole lot better in the water than the river of hate in front of us. They're trying to force us back, says Kitty. It's a trick. Something's in the water. So she falls back into the water, and it looks like there's piranhas there. Gambit says, you can keep your spear. You ain't gonna stick me with it, to one of the ninjas. I got the luck of the ages on my side, he says. And if you've killed little Kate, I'm going to use it to put a kunja on you. No amount of voodoo going to break. This is another tremendous panel with loads of work from Steve Skroce. We've got the Luca effect here. You can see Gambit. He is using the spears in the wall, almost like gymnastics apparatus, swinging around and through them. And he says, course, now that I look at it, spears are as good a way to get out of here as any. No need to show me out. I remember the way, he says. So Gambit in action, confident, and yeah, no sign of emo Gambit whatsoever. Now look at this panel here. Of course, very manga-esque, but also reminds me a little bit of, in the manga terms, Adam Warren, as well as Joe Madureira. So Skroce has a few artistic influences aside from Jeff Darrow coming out in this particular work here. And then Gambit spots Storm, and she says, I've quelled this arm of the attack. How have you and Kitty fared? Gambit replies, half good, half not. And then he warns her, behind you this time. She says, there's nothing behind me, says, save the temple statue. Do not disappoint me now by trying to trick your way into procuring the gem for your own. But the statue has come to life. Gambit says here with the charged cards, I know trust ain't never fast in coming back, but I never lied to you as an X-Man. Statue it may be, but it's got eyes for you and claws and then this is interesting. The scene switches to Kitty under the water with the piranha as she phases out the side of the wall, and she finds herself in the kind of the inner chamber where the glowing gem is. And there's some kind of painting behind the gem, and there's a figure up on a hill, and there's people with raised swords. Nice painting, she says. Wonder what it, I suppose she was going to ask what it means. And here come those ninjas again, Defiler, they exclaim. And Kitty says, great. Out of the Scylla into the Charybdis. So there's a couple of classical references here, Homeric references. The sirens from earlier, a reference, when Black Tom was talking about the siren of power, a reference to the Odyssey. And this another reference to the Odyssey that Steven Seagle has worked into the script, Scylla and Charybdis. And Scylla is the many-headed monster, and Charybdis the whirlpool. And the saying is, which do you sail by? The whirlpool or Charybdis? If you're caught between one and the other, you've got slim to no chance. So elsewhere though, there's that temple statue come to life. It's got Storm in one hand and Gambit in the other. So there's back and forth here in the conversation between them. And Gambit is saying when Storm is worried about losing an X-Man, let's just say I'm counting on her. That's Kitty Pryde being as good as her reputation. Storm there is worried, no, I will not lose an X-Man under my watch. And Gambit says, remember he hasn't met her before, but he's heard tell of her. I hear tell Shadowcat was trained as a ninja by Wolverine himself, Stormy. I trusted in her abilities, so should you. Besides, if little Kate's gone, it won't be your loss, it'll be mine. And Stormy, that's the way he used to call her when they first met. So again, Steven Seagle probably doing his homework there, reading those original few issues featuring Gambit and bringing back that version of the character, the version of the character that people and readers liked rather than emo drippy Gambit. So the statue smashes to the ground here after Gambit breaking its face with those kinetically charged cards, and then in all the dust and debris he goes missing, and Storm there is asking, where are you? Let's turn the page. So he's gone sneaking around through the temple looking for the gem. Where are you? He thinks to himself, but he's not thinking about Kitty. And then he says aloud though, when he finds her, Katie, you're alive. And she replies, not for long. If we don't get that gem out of here, check out the painting. Some kind of apocalypse, eh? He asks. Looks like. Worse than Juggy's worst tantrum. Where's Storm? So Gambit says, looking for you. So Kitty races. I'll go get her. You'll watch the gem till I get back, she asks. Sure, something like that, he replies. And then Kitty runs into Storm. Again, an interesting angle here, this top-down, three-point perspective. Difficult to do. Steve Skroce showing off what he can do. Absolutely brilliant work. So they're reunited. You've seen Gambit where as Storm? Back here, and then he's gone. And look too, the gem is gone from its stand also. And the light is gone from the chamber. Gone, Storm. You don't think I don't know him, but he wouldn't. And Storm replies, trick us? I would have hoped. Body and soul, he would not. So, another Claremontian phrase there. Body and soul. She continues though, despite his dark past, I have never known Gambit to be anything less than honourable. To double-cross us is simply not within him. And Kitty says, he's gone. The gem is gone. Denial isn't just a river in Egypt, Aurora. She replies, you're right. We must accept the hand dealt us and press on. Let us return to Black Tom. And Kitty asks, shouldn't we look for him? Gambit, that is. And Storm replies, if Remy LeBeau does not wish to be found, kitten, he will not be. All that remains is hope. Hope that Gambit is the man I believe him to be. A man with the heart of a hero, not the heart of a thief. And there in the shadows is a hand holding the gem. It's Gambit, of course. And then back in Seoul, a city full of secrets and surprises, some of them pleasant this day. So Gambit is there waiting for them, and he's having some food as well while he's at it. And Black Tom says to Storm, he said you wouldn't be coming, Storm, but I'm glad you did. We both are. And Juggernaut says, but don't expect that to buy you nothing if our paths ever cross again. And don't try to follow us neither. Come on, Tom. So it's kind of unclear here. Did Gambit give the gem to Juggernaut? I mean, he looks healthier, doesn't he? He looks bulky the way he usually does. Is that the implication that the gem was returned? And Kitty says, I guess you had a change of heart after the temple. And Gambit replies, in it. But don't go saying that on the street, petite. You'll ruin my reputation, sure enough. And Kitty asks, so what? Are you coming back? To the X-Men? Nah, he says. Sometimes you can't go back. This is one of those times. But Storm now, with the back and forth that's gone on between them, and of course theirs being the oldest friendship, or rather hers being the oldest friendship Gambit has of an X-Man, she says, come now, Remy. We both know the real reason you resist returning rogue. But issues between people must be resolved. At one point, Charles and Magneto were close, but when they drifted apart, it was the distance that made them enemies. You don't want that with the X-Men. You don't want that with Rogue. Come back with us, at least until you work this out. So he hesitates and he says, yeah, you're right, Ro. And Kitty asks a question that some readers would have, including me. So how did you get out of Antarctica, Gambit? You never did say. And he smiles there and he says, mysteriously, I walked. Let's leave it at that. And then our final shot is the Filchner. Is it Filchner or Filkner? Ice shelf Antarctica months ago. There's footprints in the snow, but 2 sets of footprints. So who was he with? Who walked with him? Next, the hunt for Xavier begins. So we're going to find out, where did Professor X go after the end of Operation Zero Tolerance. And here's what I was saying at the beginning of this video. So Steve Skroce is back at Marvel, and he's drawn this one issue of X-Men. He's not the regular artist on this title. Instead, his talent has been tapped for a new title, a Marvel first look at character designs for the new Gambit ongoing series. And the creative team, look who else is back at Marvel. Fabian Nicieza and Steve Skroce will be the penciler. So you see these character designs here. These characters going to appear in the series. Issue number 1 coming out in December. High adventure, swashbuckling heroics, exotic locales. That's pretty cool. No emo drippiness. So somebody at Marvel has understood what made Gambit popular in the first place. And I do have these issues in my collection. Anybody interested in me reviewing the new Gambit ongoing series, let me know in the comments. And there you go. Now, there was one page of letters here as well, and you can look at that if you wish in high definition, but there's nothing interesting there. And there we are. I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on Uncanny X-Men issue number 361, The Return of Gambit. And it seems like it's the return of the original Gambit with that roguish, devil-may-care attitude. Interesting choice of word, roguish, eh? Let me know your thoughts on this one in the comment section. If you enjoyed my review and commentary, please like and share the video. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.